Hi, my name is Timothy Froude. I'm President and CEO of Sokoman Minerals Corp. We're a junior company focused on gold resources in the province of Newfoundland and Labrador, Canada. Our flagship property is the Moosehead property, which has some fantastic attributes, including cross-cut by the Trans-Canada Highway. It's only 18 kilometers from a deep water port, and we're exploring in one of the world's most preferred destinations right now. Certainly, the spotlight is on Newfoundland in general, with probably 25 or 30 companies busily working away. Most companies are actually drilling right now, so it's a very exciting time to be exploring in Newfoundland. And I think the Moosehead story is certainly one that people would want to know about.
Timothy, really nice to meet you. Thank you for the introduction. I'm really looking forward to getting to know a little bit more about Sokoman Minerals.
My pleasure, Merlin. Thank you.
Could you just right off the start, could you bring up a map so that I could kind of just get the general picture about Newfoundland and understand, where the players are and what your land position is? Because one of the most remarkable things about this whole story for me is the fact that you're born and bred. You're working in your home patch.
Yes, that's correct. In fact, I'm sitting in my hometown as we speak with Moosehead, as I mentioned, the flagship property being just 22 kilometers to the east of us. So I kind of grew up knowing, I guess, that this area was special to me in more than ways than one. And little did I know that 30 odd years into my career, it would be basically my home base for a very, very high profile and I think high potential gold property.
And there it is. There's Moosehead, right? What's that structure? Is that the Cape Ray shear zone, or has it got a different name?
If you can see my mouse, I'm down at the southwest corner here now, the town of Port aux Basques, and actually where the Trans-Canada terminates in the western part of Newfoundland is here. It features most of Newfoundland's, I guess, premier gold projects in terms of the Marathon Gold Project is on its way to feasibility and perhaps even a sod turning later this year for, potentially, a 5+ million ounce gold deposit, certainly the largest undeveloped gold deposit in Newfoundland and Atlantic Canada for that matter. Further to the southwest, we have Matador Mining's Cape Ray project, which is a multi-million gold with a little bit of silver in it as well project. And as you correctly mentioned, our Moosehead project, as well as two other projects that we've joint ventured to junior companies, all sit on this major splay. And for lack of a better term, some people call it the Valentine Lake shear zone. Some people call it the Cape Ray Valentine Lake structure, whatever you want to call it. It's certainly critical and one of these deep-seated structures that you need to tap basic deep-seated fluids that are gold-bearing and obviously in multiple sites along this structure, we see significant gold deposits, including our own Moosehead.
And I see in your presentation, you describe Moosehead as being the intersection of the shear zone with turbidites. And I spoke to Matador Mining recently, and they were talking about it's the kind of the intersection with the structure and related to an intrusion and almost like a kind of a brittle ductile, almost like a kind of a brittle overprint with the mineralization coming through that. So where you are, is there an intrusion-related feature? Is there a kind of a heat source, a local heat source from an intrusion, or have you not identified that yet?
In fact, Merlin, there is an intrusion just to the east of our project. It sits, in fact, between our project and Newfound Gold's Queensway project, which sit on the opposite side. We're sitting in basically a Silurian-Devonian basin of turbiditic sequences, as you correctly pointed out. Very similar, in fact, and not that different in age from the turbidite sequences in Victoria, Australia, that hosts the Fosterville gold deposit. So we're in a very similar setting to that geologically, mineralogically, chemically, but more, I guess, to the region. Yes, we are near a structure. An intrusion. Whether or not at Valentine, the mineralization is actually hosted within the intrusion. Very little of it is actually hosted in the surrounding rocks, in the cover rocks that sit on it. In our case, our mineralization is exclusively in the sedimentary rocks and these turbidites, commonly associated spatially with these late dikes that seem to be remobilized into the same structures that host our gold mineralization. For the most part, they don't terminate mineralization, which I think is key in that they're not stoping out our mineralization, but they just seem to be hand in hand. Some are pre, some are syn, and some are post mineralization. So yeah, and whether those dikes are coming off of, it's called a Mount Peyton intrusion. It's actually just off our property. But again, whether there's a direct link, I don't think that science has been made yet.
Okay. I'm just gradually building a picture around it. Now, between 2018 and 2021, you drilled 60-odd thousand meters on the property. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And you're now into a 100,000 meter drill out, and you've done 40-odd thousand meters of that.
Yep. That's
a lot of drilling.
It is. It's a lot of data, and unfortunately, you can drill a lot more core more quickly than you can actually get results back from it. And of course, this is a symptomatic issue for everybody in the industry. And the labs here, there really is just the one lab here in Newfoundland, and it's working diligently to double its production. And I spoke with the lab manager just the other day, and he told me that they hope within a few months or less to be actually back almost to excitement days here in Newfoundland, whereby you can get results back in just a few weeks as opposed to a few months. So, it's.
So how do you handle that process, and how do you? You've got a couple of rigs running, 2-3 rigs running at the moment.
Yeah.
How do you target, model, analyze, can you just describe to me the process, kind of what's happening on the ground in terms of your thought process and actual kind of from drill core through to planning to data to model to, that whole feedback mechanism?
Well, you're correct. We have drilled over 300 holes now ourselves, and basically we're trying to accomplish, I guess, two things that are kind of interlinked. What we're trying to do is basically expand on the known mineralization that we have, while at the same time trying to deliver a database at some point down the road that will be sufficient for a 43-101 resource estimate, which we haven't done yet. We're just not there yet. So we're basically taking the approach of build the thing outwards from where we basically what it is. It's a step out program based on 10 to 15 meter intersections or holes planned to basically chase. Now, these high-grade systems, like the Fosterville type system that we're chasing, are notorious for having some very, very high grades, but in a very, very small volume of rock. In fact, we could probably fit the Swan Zone in between, I'd say, 60% of the drill holes that are on this property right now, which may sound incredible, but it's true. I mean, the Swan Zone is...
The Swan Zone in Fosterville you're talking about.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, something with a strike length of 50 meters. I mean, that's a typical drill hole spacing on most drill programs. So and historically, the program, the project we have, Moosehead, has been drilled. It had over 100 drill holes in it previous to this, but no one could hang anything together. And I think largely because people were thinking, the structures were more through going, a little more defined in terms of consistency. Not that there isn't consistency at Moosehead, but again, this type of system really wasn't recognized until very recently. And kudos to Curraghinalt Lake for figuring out the jewel in the gem in the crown of their projects at Fosterville. And tight space drilling is what it's all about, and that's what we're doing. It's why we've been so successful lately in terms of delivering consistent results. Certainly in the eastern trend and the footwall splay area, we've got 5 zones of mineralization that we're trying to bring into basically one shell, one deposit, Merlin. And
Is it structurally controlled? Is it deformed sediments? Is it strata bound? Is it the intersection of structure across a particular sediment type? Is it the intersection of various structure types? Is it on fold hinges? What are the controls on your mineralization? Because if you've got to be drilling that tight, there's got to be some geological variability which is controlling it.
Yeah, it is definitely structurally controlled, and basically what we're seeing are shear zones that are developed in the axes of very tightly folded sediments. Basically, okay. We rarely get a rock much coarser grain than a sandstone. I mean, these are very, very fine grain rocks, and it's often difficult to see markers and things. So that sort of luxury is not available to us here. Basically, we look for structure. We drill for structure first, and grade second. And the methodology that we use is quite simple. Basically, don't get too cute, and drill multiple holes from a section. I mean, sometimes these things, ramps and flats sort of thing. It seems like where we come off of a ramp and onto a flat, we get thickening, and those zones can only be a few tens of meters in volume, and you can hold a lot of gold when you're drilling multiple ounces. So, we will stick to this plan, and it seems to be working for us right now.
Is there an alteration that you can see? Is there a sulfide content? Is it the sulfur salts? Is it when do you know? And I know you've got visible gold, but is there a visual clue to when you're on the money?
Yes, and we think it's part of most of the aspects of things that you look for that you just mentioned. What we look for first in terms of structure is that we start to see cleavage developed, cross-cutting the bedding, and it's flat further away, and when it becomes almost perpendicular to the actual bedding that we can identify, that tells us that we're near the fold nose and that we're probably very close to where the thing bends over, and that's basically the next little squeeze kind of makes the thing slip, and that's when you get your crack seal, and your veins just sort of fill in those opportunities. And it's largely a structural thing. In terms of alteration, the jury's still out on that. We don't see a lot of classic just destroy the rock and make it something else. We're still able to see primary features. So it's subtle, it's brittle, and we do see increases in sulfide, mostly pyrite and arsenopyrite. But of course, the vein mineralogy is another thing, where we start seeing boulangerite, which is a lead antimony sulfur salt, in harmony with a little bit of tan sphalerite, chalcopyrite. That's where our grades just balloon. Outside of that, in terms of the actual host rocks, the sediments themselves, mainly what we see, Merlin, is increases in nice acicular arsenopyrite to a couple of percent, and about a similar percentage in pyrite. But it can just come in like bang, there it is. Sometimes it's the sulfides that you see before you see any other changes in the rock. It's quite interesting.
It may be that the turbidites are relatively unreactive. If they're just kind of trigicnoclastic and it's just silicate, silica sand grains. There's not much to alter. There's not a lot of clay mineral in there that you can, not a lot of feldspar to degrade to clay.
Yeah, and I did mention, of course, the presence of these mafic dikes, these gabbroic dikes. Maybe they're the iron that the gold likes to cling onto and precipitate out, and maybe it's the trigger is fluids that are associated with these dikes. Again, we see pre-mineral, syn-mineral, and post-mineral dikes, and so it's not like the dike is a bad thing. They are generally mineralized. Typically, they have lower grades, anywhere from less than a gram to maybe 10 grams. It's the veins that really carry the day here for us in terms of grades. Again, we have multiple holes with more than an ounce of per ton on average grade.
Call me old-fashioned, but I do like a nice mineral resource. Are you working towards one?
I'd like to think we are. Yes, I think every hole is one hole closer to that. Again, some people don't like don't like 43101s. Basically, of course, everybody knows what happens. The QP comes in and cuts all your grades. So all your beautiful assays that you're reporting in your press release, your shareholders are left scratching their head saying, wow, what happened to all the gold? Well, it just doesn't work that way. And as we know, everything gets cut to a certain level. I think in cases like Moosehead, I think we'll be given the benefit of the doubt, and we'll actually be able to get probably a higher top cut than we would if it was just a couple of odd anomalies. Like I said, a very high percentage. I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly how many, but certainly in the multiple percent of our drill intersections are what you would call high grade, and I call high grade here what people would call bonanza grade on most other projects. So we feel that we're basically marching towards that. When will we be ready to do that? I think once we merge all of our zones into one continuous network, one shell, basically, instead of having the 75 zone and South Pond and the 253, the footwall splay, the Western Trend. Once all of these have been merged into one, and we feel that they are all part of one system. They're not like different events. I think what it is basically, and you talked about structure earlier, basically the thrust fault is coming near vertical, and basically you're getting these splays coming off of this, and we're seeing multiple splays, and that's why we feel things like the Western Trend and the Eastern Trend are basically two splays off the same fault, and we're working towards it. The footwall splay, which is an offset of the Eastern Trend, is a connector, basically. So
can you check? Have you got a section of this to show me? I do want to look at the slide 9 in your corporate presentation, because that's got all the different zones in it. But I just wonder, have you got a long section or a cross section just to help me?
Okay. You really need to see this in a 3D sort of movie, and I do have one. If I can have a minute to dig it out, but basically this is a plan view. This is from our last news release, the first one for 2022, and basically what it is, we're basically infilling fairly large gaps. What you see here, the red, this is the Eastern Trend as we know it. What we're doing is basically infilling large gaps, and I'm talking 50-meter squares in what we call the Eastern Trend, where there's no resource would be there without these holes. So we need these holes, even though they're infill, as well as some step out holes in the 75 zone, basically growing these things together. But we think, and like I said, you really need to see this in a movie. So let me just see if I can find it quickly without too much fuss.
Well, if you can drink while you think, what depths are you drilling? What's an average hole depth?
Well, we're chasing mineralization mainly on two levels. One is from surface down to 60 to 70 meters. That's where most of our highest grade intersections have actually been. Although lately we're starting to see holes down vertically 200 to 250 meters. Hole lengths in the 350 to 400 meter length. We really haven't had reason to go, on a big wingding hole down, 800 meters yet. There's so much, as I call it, low hanging fruit here, Merlin, that why pass up gaining the knowledge from a half a dozen drill holes short near surface that give you extra mineralization in terms of ounces down the road, rather than a risky. I consider those types of holes risky. I'm not adverse to drilling a couple at some point, but we're also just finishing up. We're having some issues with the upper levels of the data in a CSAMT survey that we're looking to hopefully merge that with the knowledge we do have in terms of our drill hole database and where the mineralization is, and see if we can see where these things may coalesce at depth.
Using geophysics, so can I get the signature of what you know at the surface and then extrapolate that to depth?
Yes, and we want to have all that. I mean, to drill prior to having all that, information is it would be kind of folly, and I think a waste of our shareholders' money. So,
how did you find it? What were the surface indicators?
There's no outcrop exposing the mineralization anywhere on this project. it's
Glacial till.
Yeah, it's basically you're looking. It's totally blind in terms of surface exposures, and surface boulders actually was found by Noranda prospectors in the late 80s.
They were probably looking for VMS, weren't they?
No, they were following up on the government. It was when the government. This is post Hope Brook, and Hope Brook was Newfoundland's first true gold mine that was discovered by BP Resources in the early 80s, and it became a modestly successful producer in terms of produced just under 1 million ounces, but it struggled to make money. It was producing gold back then. Of course, gold was just $300 or $400 an ounce, and they tried to operate an underground mine. Anyway, long story short, so after the government realized that there could be significant sized gold deposits in Newfoundland, because we were never a jurisdiction, people came to look for gold. People came to look for iron ore or nickel or things like that, or copper. But no one really looked for gold. So they commissioned a big regional province-wide lake sediment geochemistry program, and it turned up some anomalous lake sediments in gold, arsenic, and antimony on what is now the Moosehead project. So Noranda sent in prospectors and promptly found several boulders that ran up to, I think, 400 grams per ton. And basically they staked it, and Noranda drilled 3 holes. Of course, Noranda was never a really good gold company, with all due respect to Noranda. They were a very good base metal company, and they drilled thinking they were looking for 500 million ton ore body. So they drilled 3 holes that were widely spaced, got some anomalous values, and basically let the ground lapse. And the founders of what is now Altius Minerals Corp, now a royalty-paying company. Wow, good for them. Arguably the most successful junior ever to come out of Newfoundland. Acquired it, and through various joint venture partners, drilled 100 holes over almost a 20-year period. And finally, we found each other. And in our very first drill hole, I know I'm going way back here in terms of what we're probably talking about, but yeah, in our very first hole, we cut 12 meters of 45 grams, and our fortune hasn't been the same since then. Or I guess basically our fortunes were determined based on that, and we haven't looked back. So, okay, I found that mineralized model here. Let me just see if I can. Can you see that now?
I certainly can.
Okay, now let's see if we can get that any bigger.
That's pretty good.
So here you can see basically our 5 main zones. The red would be the eastern trend, the blue would be the western trend, and that's where basically the historical resource was. So if I stop it there, you can see where there's several zones that are kind of sub-parallel to each other. Of course, the 2 biggies being the main eastern trend, and the blue being the western trend. And as you can see, there's a plethora of drill hole directions here, meaning that people were kind of surmising or guessing, well, where do we go from here? And I think we've gotten a little better at targeting. But one feature I want to see here, I don't know how well you can see this, but you can see this little yellow gem coming out through here.
Yep.
This is what we call our footwall splay.
Yeah.
And it's at a completely different orientation than what we were used to seeing gold sitting in here. And now it looks like it actually may be one of these linking structures between the eastern trend and the western trend. If we just continue with this now, we'll see it a little better. And basically, it just curls right in under and sits as just basically an appendage, if you will, to the main eastern trend. And this is where some of our best grades are. No trouble to get a few meters of 30, 40, 50 grams in this. But our mission right now, and it may look, and of course, looking at things in a still shot is always deceiving. But you can see here, this is what we call our 75 zone, and we call it that because it was intersected first in hole 75. But our mission right now is to grow this towards that and grow this towards that. So basically, and you'll see the gaps here in drilling. This is the South Pond zone. This is something we found midsummer last year, follow-up of some float on the side of South Pond. We drilled and got, again, some pretty decent grades, 30, 40 grams over several meters. And it's all still wide open pretty much, with the exception of one or two holes that really aren't even on the section. So we'll just continue on here. And you'll start to see where you can see some pretty big gaps in terms of drill hole coverage.
Can you just stop it there, please?
Right here, right?
Yeah.
So,
okay,
so here we are marching the eastern trend as far as we can. These are barge-based holes here. So we currently can't drill with a barge because the pond is partially frozen. Unfortunately, it's not frozen enough to get a rig out on the pond right now. And it's looking kind of dubious that we'll get out there based on the amount of winter that's left. But in any event, right now we're currently focused on this area in here. And as you can see, there's, if I just let this go just a little bit further.
Yeah.
You can see there's some pretty serious gaps here, between zones. So these black circles here are RC holes that Altius drilled about 25 years ago that only really collared into a meter of bedrock, and that was it. So really there's only one or two holes between the western trend and the south pond. And this gap represents about 250 meters. So there's a lot of room here for us to grow internal, if you will, to what we now know as the zones we have. At the same time, we're going to be expanding everything, within reason or means to basically make everything bigger in every sensitive direction. But what we really want to do, and maybe I'll just bring this back again a little bit, just to show. Okay. Again, where these things may coalesce at depth. And sorry, I interrupted your question, but you can tell me when to stop again now when we come around. Because it's our belief that these things all do emanate from a common feeder source at depth. And
are you comfortable with where you're drilling at the moment in your drill direction? Have you kind of settled on a preferred azimuth and dip?
Yes, although we still get surprises, which you're going to get anyway. Most of our holes are now drilled basically from east to west, just for a rough sense of direction. For years, no one bothered to drill many holes in that direction, and consequently, we're missing the zone. In fact, that's exactly what happened at our discovery hole. We basically turned the drill to almost 130 degrees from where it from inside the pond, from previous known setups, and we intersected a very significant gold intersection that now is obviously a key part of our eastern trend.
Now, Great Bear just got bought out with no resource on them, and Newfound Gold have got $1 billion market cap and no resource. You've got a market cap of whatever it is, 70 million Canadian. What's the gap? What's the difference?
I wish I knew that. It's a bit of a sore point, obviously, for me personally. I think there are other companies as well. You factor Newfound out of it, the elephant in the room, and even other companies that have come into this play subsequent to. We probably brought a large part of what's happening here. In addition to obviously the fine work that the folks at Marathon Gold have done, but we drilled our discovery hole in 2018. Newfound drilled theirs in 2019. So we brought some players to the table. Now clearly, Newfound with their fantastic marketing and big budget approach to things have certainly lit the fire here and beat the drum quite loudly. But if you look at the body of work, really there's only two companies in this part of the province that really have any volume of data worth basing a reasonable share price on, and why they're 20 times our market cap. I don't quite know yet, but yeah, it's a bit of a sore point, but at the end of the day, I think the laundry will get done, and we'll reward our shareholders with a much higher share price.
And those lenses that I was looking at, how thick were they? I mean, are you talking 2 meters or is it 5 meters? If you think you're in the zone, And I know there's a great deal of variability, but what do you think? Oh, we're on it. And is it 5 meters at 1 ounce, or is it 2 meters at 2 ounces?
I think it varies between those really high grade veins, and we do get variations in thickness in terms of support from the wall rock, the hanging wall, and the footwall either side of the veins. The veins range from less than a meter up to, I think, our best quartz intersection with gold in it is probably 6 meters. So, and by the time you factor in, the support from the wall rock, and I'm not talking 50 ppb support, I'm talking, half a gram or a gram material that can stretch things out. We're looking at a zone that's between 2 and 10 meters in thickness. You can use 5 as an average, I think. And we've drilled now down plunge, I guess, if you will, or down the, not down the dip. That may sound, that could sound two ways, but, down dip, the intersect, the mineralization's been defined for about 250 meters, and 400, we hope to close the gap to bring basically the 75 zone in tune and directly connected with the eastern trend, 500 meters.
Yeah.
So,
okay. No,
and open in every direction.
And if you take an average 5 meter kind of package, does it come out at 15 grams a ton? And I'm not asking you to kind of predict what the resource grade is, but when you get the assays back, you go, okay, we're in it. What does that look like to you when you get those assays back?
Well, we're kind of lucky, like we do see visible gold quite a bit. And obviously when we see visible gold, the grades will reflect that. It's when we don't see visible gold that gets a little tougher. We have to wait for the assays. And right now we're about 30 or so holes outstanding. We're not sitting on assays. Everything that's material has been rushed to the lab and reported. We do have about 1,200 or so assays outstanding that would either be extra sampling in the holes or whatever. We've been drilling now for a few weeks on this project again, and we are, again, cutting what we feel is material core and rushing it to the lab. So again, we're back into that wait and see mode. But I don't know. I mean, I've never done a 43-101 resource personally in terms of calculating out what that is. That's a lot of math and computer science there. But it's going to depend on a lot of things. It's going to depend on what you use as a cutoff. It's going to depend on how comfortable the QP is in linking these things. And this is where I think, to answer again another question you asked earlier was, how do you feel about the way you're doing things? That our drill spacing will help us in that regard in terms of putting a more defined, sharper defined target in terms of ounces on the map down the road, and eliminate the need for costly infill drilling. Because I mean, it's hard to drill infill 50 meters. You can, but if your target is down the hole 100 meters, you run the risk of that hole crossing the plane of a hole alongside it. So I can't say for sure it's going to be 2 grams or 10 or 15, but and that's why, I mean, the more holes we have, the more assured you will be that it's going to be a good number. And we're not there yet. We have obviously 50,000 plus more meters in this phase, and we're not going to stop there either. We'll probably be raising some money at some point this year. We currently have just about nine and change in the bank, and based on projections of cost, that's enough to certainly complete the program. Now, our other projects that we may or may not get a chance to talk about obviously will require some attention as well. And so, yeah, we'll be looking to raise a little bit of money this year, but Moosehead will always be our flagship, and that will never change. Okay,
so let's just 2 really quick questions. How many meters are you drilling a month at the moment at this kind of go forward rate, or will you be drilling how many meters a month?
we should finish this round, this next 50,000 meters by late summer. So if we look at that, maybe 8,000 meters a month.
Try and tie this all into a resource. Are you going to wait for the data for the full 50,000 meters and then try and pull it into a resource the back end of the year? Or are you going to try and pull the trigger on something earlier?
We're going to want to have all the assays, certainly as many as possible, that are relevant to the resource. And again, it depends on when the QP does his modeling. What is he going to call a shell? What is he going to use? What is his cutoff going to be? So I'd prefer to have all the assays in hand before we do anything like that. So it'll be next year before anything comes out for sure. I very doubt we'll have anything out in 2022, Marlon.
Okay, thank you. That's really, really helpful. Right, we've got a couple of minutes on other projects. Fleur de Lys, Golden Hope.
Yeah.
You've been some waves in the lithium space, I believe.
Yeah, well, it's a funny thing when you're an exploration company. You should always have your eyes wide open to any possibilities and leave no stone unturned, pardon the pun. While prospecting for gold on our Golden Hope project, which is down in southwestern Newfoundland, southwest further even of Valentine Lake, we made a discovery of I consider them high grades, a couple of percent Li2O, in a swarm of pegmatite dikes that just won't seem to stop growing. We've defined mineralization in outcrop and in float over 2 kilometers along strike and about 1 kilometer in apparent thickness. In fact, we just completed a very short program. It probably would have been longer, but the weather is just terrible. We lost a good number of days. It was starting to get a bit of a cost annoyance for us, so we decided to. And besides, we have enough information. We now have confirmed significant thicknesses of pegmatite with lithium in them based on visuals of spodumene. And yeah, we're basically going to retool now for the next phase of drilling, which will start at some point in 2022. Very exciting, but it's still a gold project. And we also cut a lot of samples in those same drill holes for potentially gold mineralization. Whenever I see pyrite and silica together, that's always a good thing for me. And we did take several hundred samples for gold too. So, and after that, Grey River, another JV with Benton, we drilled 5 holes there last fall, still waiting for the finals on those, but 4 or 5 holes report significant gold mineralization, up to 37 grams in some narrow intervals where gold previously wasn't really reported before. It's 14 kilometers long. The 5 drill holes cover a 4 kilometer strike length. It could be something very significant. Obviously, it's going to require.
Are you carried on those? Are you operating those joint ventures? What are your funding commitments to the joint venture projects you've got?
That's 50-50 with Benton in terms of reward and risk. In terms of cost, we both pay 50% of the bills. Because Benton has a little more of a manpower advantage over us, they are managing the project, and I have no issue with that. Keeps us focused on Moosehead. So we basically are looking to raise probably $2 million for Grey River, $2 million again for Golden Hope to evaluate not just the lithium, but as well the gold. And then I must speak of our other 100% owned project, Fleur de Lys, up on the north coast of Newfoundland, that's targeting Curraghinalt type of mineralization. And for those not familiar with Curraghinalt, it's an Irish gold deposit, over 6 million ounces. It's one of the largest gold deposits in the Caledonites, and we've got a little chunk of that geology sitting right on the north coast of Newfoundland, and we are in the process of getting our final till results back from our phase 1 project there, and we're coming up with some pretty impressive gold grain counts. In fact, we just received our highest gold grain counts, a little bit out of the bag here today. In the last batch of results, several hundred grains, mostly pristine, in an area with very little to no work. Again, this 1900 claim property had 1 drill hole. One drill hole.
And you're doing bottom of till auger sampling, is that right?
No, these are all sea horizon tills,
Okay.
hand dug. Yeah, under the stewardship of Overburden Drilling Management. I think they're probably the world's leaders in terms of managing and implementing and understanding gold in glacial systems. So we work closely with them, and everything we do is with with their guidance and support. And I think Fleur de Lys will now start to take on a more critical role in our development. In fact, we could even be drilling on Fleur de Lys late this year. Wow, it's already February 2022. I can't believe it. Yeah, it's 100% owned. We got a big land position. It's a district scale. It's a company maker really on its own.
Yeah.
And I think and we're in a great area. All of Newfoundland's current gold production comes from, guess where? The Baver Peninsula, which is where the Fleur de Lys project is. So brownfields, everyone's on board, great jurisdiction. I like our chances.
Yeah, well, it's great. It's really important as an exploration company to maintain optionality, and you got to have that hopper of projects coming through, because not all of them are going to make it. Some are going to fall over.
Yes.
Some are going to go through. And with a kind of a market favorite at the moment, something like lithium, you may be able to monetize or be able to do a deal which will kind of, with some funding structure, will enable you to go further on one of your other projects, or you'll get a carried interest. It's these you need irons in the fire. You need to have this leverage, this opportunity suite as an explorer developer. So it's really interesting to see what's going on through your portfolio in Newfoundland.
Yes, well, thank you, Merlin. And as you correctly point out, you need that pipeline of projects. I mean, you can't just be focused on or have just one asset and expect to reward your shareholders every time with that sort of position. I think obviously the lithium, as you point out, is something that we hope to monetize in this hot lithium market, which is why basically we made the extraordinary move to drill this thing so quickly. We only acquired this project, which was a grassroots project, 6 months ago or 7 months ago. So
right.
It's very quick to do this. It's not something I'm used to doing, but the target was just so compelling that we decided to go ahead with that small program. And as you correctly pointed out, you need that pipeline of projects. So we want to know where this project is going to sit within our setup as soon as possible. We are still a gold company, first and foremost. And if we can monetize the lithium to our shareholders' advantage, we'll want to do that as quickly as we can.
Timothy, thank you so much. It's been a fantastic insight into what your company is doing in Newfoundland. I really appreciate it. And good luck with the drilling this year. I look forward to catching up during the course of the year.
Great, Merlin. Thank you very, very much.